To meet the requirements to obtain your private pilot certificate, the FAA says you're required to have a minimum of 3 hours of instrument training, whether this is actually flying through the clouds or it's by use of foggles or some sort of hood, so you can't see outside, only be able to see by your flight instruments. When you're looking at your flight instruments, you have your airspeed indicator, your attitude indicator, your altimeter, your turn coordinator, and your heading indicator, and your vertical speed indicator. When we fly via instrument reference alone, we want to make our corrections purposeful and small. When we're making turns, we only bank standard rate turns. And standard rate is when your turn coordinator's little wings turn and that the wing touches that second line. Okay? Now, standard rate turn is 3 degrees per second. And what bank angle that actually is depends on your airspeed. Because if we were flying at an airspeed of 60, for example, then if you did a full circle, your radius might be that big. But if you're flying 120, now if you did a circle, the radius would be a lot larger because you're covering more ground. And if the standard rate turn is 3 degrees per second, the bank angle required to slice through 3 degrees within 1 second would vary. If you were going 60 on your airspeed indicator, it may only require maybe a 8 or 10 degree bank. But if you are going 120, then it might require a 20 degree bank, for example. So what you want to do is, at first you're looking at your attitude indicator, and if you want to make a turn to the left, then you would purposely make sure that your wings are banking left against the horizon. And you quickly scan to your turn coordinator and stop your bank when the little wing touches that little second line there. And then you know you're in a standard rate turn. Now you can come back up here to see what bank angle it gave you. So if it gave you a 12 degree bank, then you would maintain that bank angle while you're in the turn. Now, as far as rolling out on the turn, as far as rolling out on your heading, if you're instructed to turn to a heading of 270, then while you're in this turn, you'd say that you're in a 12 degree bank, you would roll out half of your bank angle. So take half of your bank angle and to roll out in advance. That way we won't shoot past that heading. So if you're only banking 12 degrees, as you see 270 come around, try to catch it with rudder and aileron rollout about 6 degrees early. And that will allow you to roll out on the heading and not overshoot it. And if we are climbing or descending, whatever your climb rate is, you take 10% of that. So if you were climbing at 600 feet per minute, then you take 10% of that to begin your level off. So if you're climbing at 600 feet per minute, then 60 feet before your desired altitude is where you would begin to adjust your pitch back to normal. Now when you are climbing, pay attention to what pitch gives you a nice climb airspeed. If you are trying to indicate, let's say you're trying to indicate 80 on your climb, and you notice that about 8 to 10 degrees pitch up holds you at 80, then you want to try to focus and trim that airplane for that 8 to 10 degree pitch up. And next time you have to climb again, be sure that you only pitch the aircraft up to that 8 or 10 degree pitch up line. And how your lines usually are in your attitude indicator, a lot of times they'll have a short hash and a long hash. And if they have that, the short hash is usually worth 5 and the big hash is usually worth 10. So normally your pitch up on your attitude indicator looks something like that. So if you're supposed to be climbing, you would pitch for about an 8 or 10 degree pitch up. If you're supposed to be level, then you would make the wings be level on the horizon. And if you're supposed to be descending, then you would push the yoke forward and allow your pitch attitude to be just slightly below the horizon. So far we haven't really pitched or banked very aggressively at all, and we don't want to, because we don't want to end up with vertigo where you can't tell which way is up and your brain will become very confused. So our max pitch up, we might use this maybe 10 degrees, Our match pitch down might be 3 to 5 degrees, and our max bank angle will never be more than 30 degrees. Most of the time it ranges from 10 to 15 degrees. So be sure you don't over pitch or over bank when you're flying by your instruments.